Boom. Okay, I've decided to go live about a minute and a half early. Just 'cause I can. All right. Looky. Here's where we're at today in terms of the total workflow. Interestingly enough, as you can see, we are approaching, it's 27 seconds, so we're approaching 30 seconds actually of productivity. If I want to hit 30 seconds, there's going to be a bit of effort required, no doubt about it. But I think it can be done, and frankly, it would be pretty cool to be able to hit, hey Max, it would be cool to be able to hit 30 seconds in about 4 hours. My long-standing projections were that that would be fairly easy to hit in 6 hours a day, which would mean that's one 24-minute episode essentially every 2 months, because you're talking about getting 48 days of production going on. Okay, so before I get too far, as I was reviewing, you notice this shot here versus this shot here. See the background problem? So the change in color continuity from here to here was bugging me, so I went and loaded this up, and now let's go ahead and fix the other one as well. Okay, so that shot is 289.f. So let's just fix it really quick, and I'm going to see if I can fix it by doing a layer copy of an actual filter mask. So if we go to recent, there's F, there it is. And what I want to do is, here in Krita, is I'm going to grab this filter mask. So this is just a curves operation. If I look at the properties, the curves come up. So you can apply a filter to anything at any time, and you can apply it as a quote-unquote filter mask, which makes it procedural, meaning you can change it anytime you want, and you can also turn it off and on. So I'm going to copy this layer, and let's see if it works. Then I'm going to go into this group and paste layer. And it looks like, it definitely looks different. Let's see. Properties. Does not seem to be having an effect. So why? And oh, I know why. Okay, this is definitely interesting. Okay, so one of the significant things you have to remember about a filter mask is that it is in fact a mask. If you took a paint layer that was animated, like this one, for example, and you cut, and I'm pretty sure, now don't quote me on this one, but I think you can actually, let me see if we can get to see this. Show in timeline. Okay, so, so here's the filter mask. So I'm pretty sure that you actually can take and copy keys. There you go. You can see that it worked. So you can actually copy keys from a paint layer into a filter mask layer, which then, of course, allows you to animate the effect of the filter mask over time. In addition to, since it is a mask, you can actually paint whatever, you know, black and white stuff you want on here to alter where the mask is applied. Therefore, the problem here, I would presume, is that what we need to do, and I'm just going to give this a try, I'm going to actually solo the layer and hit the fill tool and fill it with white. Okay, so obviously I can't really see if that did anything, but as you can see, yep, it worked exactly as I expected. So what happened was, because I took the filter mask layer, which effectively does act as a paint layer, and filled it with white, the entire background is now affected by it. So that solved that problem. Okay, cool. So now we can render this baby out. And we need to change this from A to F. Unfortunately, Krita does not remember the paths associated. It doesn't associate the render paths with the Krita file, so you have to always make sure you change it to the correct one, or else you'll wind up overwriting the wrong scene. Boom. Okay, so that's pretty cool. definitely cool. Hey, Darren. All right, so let's go back here. So I was watching the news while I was thinking about coming back on here. And as you can see, we've got this solved now. I'm watching the news, and boy, there's a lot of stuff in the news. The interesting thing that occurred to me to maybe talk about was that we live in a culture right now where there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of conspiracy theory stuff going on that has garnered a lot of attention. Well, the thing that's interesting about that to me, save this, by the way. Save this, by the way. The interesting thing to me about that is where conspiracy theories come from and why they so often turn out historically when we look back to have been false. Why does that happen? Okay, so I'll get into that in the background after we go ahead and plan our work and figure out what our strategy is going to be here. Okay, so we've got this wide shot where she is seeing her mother, Golek, and Balder all chit-chatting. We cut to this shot. The only reason Balder's even in the shot, actually, is because he served a dramatic purpose by coming along and making this comment to Tianara before he walks off towards the house. Okay. And it was just to punctuate the fact that Tianara's kind of in a bad way because she's kind of sort of got in trouble. So once we cut to the close-ups, we don't really see Balder anymore. So we've got this medium shot with the three of them, and then it cuts to close-ups of the mother, and then Golek, back to the mother, and then back to Tianara, and that's that. So what's our strategy going to be? Well, the strategy should be to do the close-ups first, because then we can take these close-ups, ostensibly, shrink them down, and then plug them into the medium shot. Okay? With probably some adjustments to the outlines, because typically when you take a really tight close-up and shrink it down like to this, you're going to, obviously all your outlines are going to get, they're going to get fairly faint. So you got to be a little careful about that. But so my point about, actually, let's do Golek first. Reason I want to do Golek first is because, well, actually, let's stay back up here. Because if I'm not going to be dumb, it seems to me that it would make a lot of sense to reuse assets if at all possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scan through the show. Here we go. Here we go. And see if there's a close-up of Golek that we can steal. Okay, so this is the shot of Golek actually talking to the king. I'm not totally thrilled with the shot, so I think what I'll do is I'll do a semi-cheat, which is I'm going to copy that snapshot to the clipboard and just use it as a guide. So let's go back here, and again, on the other screen, I'm switching to the Golek shot to see what the shot number is. And we can actually also solve that problem by just dragging the storyboard image in here. So now there it is, and then I can hit Control V, so I've got the actual drawing of Golek. And I'm going to hit Control Shift and scale this up so it's kind of sort of pretty close to the level or the sizing that we need. And in all likelihood, we should be able to actually steal the colors from it, so that's kind of useful. And let me see, that's a little bit large. I basically want to get him framed reasonably well. Let's apply the rule of thirds. All right, and now let's just kind of make this match the storyboard shot as well. Okay, so we can use that as a drawing guide. And so let's put a layer above that. So the thing we want to recognize about, want to understand, we construct in our minds a story that explains our world and our life. Okay, this is not to, this is not a criticism. it's actually a survival mechanism that's quite useful and quite necessary because it allows us to use our memory and our understanding of things that have happened in the past to explain what's happening in the present. It's actually quite useful. Do I want to put his, let's say, let's just in case, let's put his body and slash clothing in a different layer. Okay. So then let's go back here, and we probably need to put in a little indication of, well, actually, no. Strike that. I'm going to put the indication of the neck here. So let's just go ahead and just draw over this. That was bad. Sorry. There we go. So that'll be colored in with flesh tone. So for the sake of discussion, can we agree that this proclivity to make up a story is something that everyone does? We do it all the time. It's perfectly natural. It's perfectly normal. And let's just agree that psychologists have pretty good consensus that this is a thing that everyone does. It is a normal, natural thing. So then the question has to become, I suppose, well, where does the story come from? All right, let's grab this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start soloing these layers. I'm going to grab behind mode, so Shift Alt Q, hit the fill tool, fill that in. And then by just jumping back here, because again, I am in layer solo mode, so to speak, makes it easy to grab the colors and get this guy blocked in without too much effort. Okay, so now we'll turn the solo thing back off, and I suppose it might be useful to just push that up over the top and then turn it down. That just gives us the basic breakdown of his facial structure. So we have this situation in the United States of America, obviously, where this business of oh yeah, we want to be in normal mode. This business of voter fraud has taken extreme hold, and a lot of people really wonder, you know, did this happen? Well, I'm pretty sure it didn't happen. And the reason I'm sure it didn't happen is because we make up a story. And if you want to understand what happened, let us say for simplicity that we have two choices. Two choices where we get our story from. Choice A is conspiracy. Many, many forces with malevolent intent, all working together against all odds, have conspired to deliver a certain result, which is obviously egregious to a certain segment of the population. That's a possibility. It's important to acknowledge that that is a possibility. The question is it likely? So, to decide whether it's likely, let us consider the alternative explanation. And by the way, if this discussion results in you saying, man, dude, if you're going to talk about this kind of stuff, I ain't going to watch your channel no more. If that's you, feel free to weigh in, because if you guys don't, if you want me to keep this stuff to myself, I will. I really don't care. I'm just kind of rambling because this is something that's interesting to me. It's not interesting because of my opinions about the socio-cultural and political conversation, even though I do have strong opinions about that. But that's not why it's interesting. It's interesting because of what it says about human nature and how we are inclined to behave. And it really speaks to some things I've talked about a lot about the creative process, which is the power that fear has to inhibit you from trusting yourself to do what you really want to do and having the courage to try at the risk of failure. Well, anyway, my point is, I'm seeing a problem here. I think that let me just think about this. Yeah, I know what the problem is. Okay. Kind of wish I had my outlines on a separate layer, but that's okay. I am going to select just this and just test something here. Yeah. He's supposed to have, at the risk of sounding racist, slightly Asian eyes. His eyes really are supposed to angle down a little bit. So yeah, that's like way more accurate to go like. Okay, so now the zillion-dollar question is, what's the alternative explanation, if not a conspiracy? If crazy things have gone, either gone wrong or right or wacky in our nation. Okay, I'm just actually right now looking at what's going on here. I've selected my color. There must be a selection, and indeed, that's what the problem was. Usually, if you're using a tool and nothing seems to be happening, it's usually because there's a selection somewhere and you didn't realize there was a selection. So, okay, stop. We have to turn this off. My bad. That semi-transparent layer was affecting the color, so therefore when I sampled color, I can't sample the color accurately. So the zillion-dollar question is, if there isn't a conspiracy, what's the explanation? And the explanation is very simple. Incentives. If you want to know why people do what they do, why things go the way they go, what you want to look at is what are the incentives that are in play that might be influencing people to behave in a certain way. Now, what we're seeing on the right, obviously, in regard to the election is we started with the postulate that there definitely will be fraud, but we haven't been able to find it, and yet it appears that there are those who are insisting against all available evidence that the fraud really absolutely must be there. Well, how can people act that irrationally? It really could be, that there's some malevolent conspiracy at play. Or it could be that they are incentivized in some way to choose to take the position that there surely must be this fraud. So it's an interesting discussion because I don't have to really have a strong opinion about which answer is correct, because my experience in life is that 99 times out of 100, it turns out that incentives explained everything. And usually, frankly, in practice, that means follow the money. In this case, it kind of means follow the power, follow the position, follow the prestige, follow the opportunity. You know, just look at what do you gain if it goes the way that's consistent with your story. That's the question you want to ask. Usually when you look at incentives, all of a sudden it becomes stupidly obvious why everybody's doing what they're doing or claiming what they're claiming. And it certainly is always the right explanation when you have a situation that appears to be utterly irrational in terms of the things that people are claiming. Which is, I contend, is what we have in this case. So, there clearly wasn't voter fraud, and it's embarrassing to most of us outside the U.S. Oh, I know. Not only you, Darren, but I mean my friends in Germany, my friends in India. Yeah, everybody thinks it's just stupid. So, but the important thing I think for us as creative people to recognize is that this is just a human dynamic that happens to have taken hold socioculturally in a much bigger than normal way. But the actual dynamics in play are completely normal and are, because it just came to the point where I realized that he's so emotionally committed to this story being true that there's no amount of evidence or data that will cause him to retreat from that position. So I can understand it. I don't respect it, and for me, I find it personally disappointing because I think, geez, dude, come on, you're smarter than that, you know? Because at the end of the day, I mean, the truth is for me, I'll tell you a little secret, folks. The outcome of this election is almost utterly irrelevant for me. In other words, my life will not be changed much one way or the other. However, having said that, I do have a preference. But it's really just my basic preference is quite simple. In life, sometimes it's better to take a little step to the left, and sometimes it's better to take a little step to the right. And it's important to acknowledge that there is no in between. You're always doing either one or the other. You have to choose. So I'm saying we probably are better off to take a step to the left. Okay? Some people disagree, and that's fine. They can disagree. I may turn out to be wrong. I may actually turn out to be wrong. But that's my opinion at this point based on the best information I have. So I've decided that that's the position I'm going to take at this point. Okay, Golik, I'm loving you. You're looking good. Now, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and bake in his, actually strike that. I'm just going to put goatee on a separate layer. I can always bake it down later, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and smack it in there on its own layer so that I can actually dial in the opacity of it and stuff. So if you want to understand, you prefer less drama. Yeah, fair enough, Amar. Well, that's why I'm not stating it quite so much in terms of my personal preferences of the political outcome as much as what it says about human nature. What we're seeing, the commentary we're seeing socioculturally about human nature right now is very profound. Okay, and now I think what I'm going to do is hit the Control M, and I'm going to actually kick up the red. Yeah, let's just kind of give him a little bit of that rust color in his goatee. And then I think with that, I think I'll go ahead and bake it down and then just kind of dial that down a little bit so that I've got room for his mouth. Okay, so there's that, and then let's go MOUTH. And I need to jump up here and look at my... How do you set the hotkey for liquefy? I don't have a hotkey for liquefy per se because it's part of the let me get the terminology correct here. Hello? Come on. The transform tool, which, you know, by some amazing coincidence, it could be a conspiracy. By some amazing coincidence, right now, for some reason, there we go, the tooltips weren't coming up. So transform a layer or selection. So I mapped, it's not the default hotkey, but I mapped A to the free transform tool. So if you hit the free transform tool, within the transform tool, you've got all kinds of different options. So I hit A, and then I right mouse click and choose liquefy if I'm wanting to use it at the time. A lot of times I find myself going mirror horizontal or whatever. So yeah, that's what that's all about. Okay, so mouth. So what I was going to say before I was so rudely interrupted was that I need to look at my script and see what Golik says. Perhaps, cousin, a moment may finally be at hand. Okay, okay. Perhaps, cousin, a moment may finally be at hand. He's supposed to actually have the voice of Edward G. Robinson, which kind of around this type of pitch range, I think, and it's a rather boxy type of voice, with a little bit of a lilt. I'm thinking of the role of Dathan that he played in the Ten Commandments. Yeah, I think that's kind of sort of the voice I'm looking for. Okay, so I need to look at that again. Perhaps cousin. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in a key. Always wait 4 seconds, or I mean, I should say 4 frames, half a second. Okay, so let's go to frame 4 and rock and roll. Okay, so I'm gonna check the messages here real quick. We're going some nutcase. Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely, Amar. That's the problem right now. The problem right now is that people's emotional commitment to the story is so strong, and so many people have drunk the Kool-Aid to choose to believe it against all available evidence. Again, because they're emotionally committed. This is the important point about human nature. The emotional commitment to the position for most people is a stronger incentive than data. That's the problem. So when the courts dismissed on the basis of lack of standing or lack of evidence, the conclusion that those people came to is that the courts must be being paid off. The judges are being paid off. There are people, a fair number of people, not a huge number of people, but there are definitely people in this country who are convinced that the Illuminati lizard people that are tied in with the Rothschilds have either paid off or threatened all of the federal judges in the United States. So, but this is what happens when the evidence associated with the conspiracy story falls apart. You have to expand the story. The story and the conspiracy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where we're at today. Well, if you get people who are that emotionally committed to an irrational position, then they may become extremely irrational once we pass Wednesday and it is really obvious that the myth has been destroyed, that the myth has fallen apart. The myth of Donald Trump as savior has not come to pass. And I tell you the truth, in the QAnon circles, there's people that have been talking about this for a couple of years. This whole idea that Trump as... Okay, now OBS is back on. So the story always becomes not only more grandiose, but also more simplistic. It has to be really, really simple, just white hats and black hats. In my opinion, it's never that simple. Actually, there's always nuance to it. People aren't, it's not like in a movie. Okay, so he says perhaps cousin. Perhaps cousin. Perhaps cousin. I guess if I go like this, maybe this will work. I'm going to have to clean this up a bit. Perhaps cousin. Yeah, I think I can do it that way. Perhaps cousin. Okay. I'm going to do one frame here and go mo. And again, one frame. I might be putting in too many keys here. Our moment, oops, that key needs to be here. May finally be at hand. Okay, so just a little variation there. And then let's just make this a smile. So for me, this stuff I'm discussing is really not surprising, actually. And it's dangerous territory because, honestly, as a filmmaker, you know, in the filmmaking world, I am known as a Christian filmmaker, and and while I do spiritually identify as a Christian, my view of the Christian story is quite unconventional at this point in my life, and probably would be considered a bit strange and to some even sacrilegious, only because I insist upon being willing. And by the way, for this is like the only time this has ever happened, I'm going to actually select curve here to sort of force this to smooth out a bit. Yeah, that helps. I hardly ever use curve mode, but hey, by the way, I went ahead and bought one Tesla. Yeah. Just figured we'd get that out of the way. I didn't like that shot. I didn't like that one either. That little wiggle's probably okay. Okay, yeah, this I don't like. There we go. Maybe a little bit of a curvature that way. Kind of a Rankin Bass mouth. If you ever watched the Rankin Bass Christmas shows, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's see how that's looking. So I'm going to jump over here and see if there's any comments. You're right, it's black hats versus white hats. Good versus evil. You're either with us or against us. Very scary. Exactly. So to speak to what Amar was saying, the big concern is that once the myth is sufficiently blown up, if you will, so that it's just obvious that the miraculous Trump as savior mythology is not going to come to pass, some people may get violent, and I really hope they don't, but man, it is definitely not cool. What's so sad about it is that what the people on the right of this issue don't understand is that those of us that are kind of on the left of it, if there was voter fraud, we wanted it to be found out too. If we lost the election, we want to lose the election. We don't want to win at all costs. We want it to be good and right and fair. And I think that's a point that seems to be sadly missed a lot of the time. I'm going to try something here with the mouth. I'm going to put this in overlay mode and see, or maybe multiply. Let me try multiply mode. I want to see if it helps me. I was going to see if maybe it helped me pick up a little bit of the flesh tone underneath, but it's not a big deal. I could always add a filter mask if I really wanted to, or a layer to tint it, actually. Perhaps, cousin. Okay, let me get his line here. He says, perhaps, cousin. Our moment may finally be at hand. So he says, perhaps, cousin, our moment may finally be at hand. Okay, yeah. So, and then I would say, let's just grab the liquefy tool as just, reconnection successful. You know, it might turn out that this video gets zapped for some reason because certain words that I've said in the last half hour are actually trigger words on for the YouTube algorithm. We'll see. Okay, so now I think that in order to really be wise about this shot, it would probably be prudent. There's a couple things I want to do here real quick. Save often. OpenToonz crashed. Yeah, it does happen, man. It's happened to all of us more than once. Okay, so I'm jumping up here to the storyboard. I'm just going to zip along here. And yeah, that's the younger Golik. And the older Golik. Okay. So I'm going to make a few adjustments. Just judicious adjustments here. G key. Grab this color, and I think. Okay, I really did not mean to do that. I want to see what happens if we make it. Widen him just a bit. Let's just see. I think so. Okay, so File, Save. Okay, so what I'm going to do is what I call group and dupe. Now, actually, it's already in a group. So I'm going to duplicate the group, turn this off, and then hit Control E and actually merge this group. So this is going to take a little time because OpenToonz or OpenToonz, Krita has to calculate the transform mask for every single frame, and sometimes that results in glitches. In this case, because he really doesn't move around, I figured I was pretty safe. It looks like I am. So that means that we still have the group if I need to fall back on it, all these layers, but for now, because this is a fairly simple close-up shot, I'm just gonna keep this handy, and let me just think about transforms. I think not. I think we're just going to leave him as he is. Okay. So we're going to need a background behind him, and essentially the building is back there. So let's just get rid of this, add a background layer. We want this to be pretty simple. I'm going to look at the building that Tia Inara initially looked at and saw. Okay, actually that's okay. I think I'll crank down the opacity a bit and just kind of we're just gonna kind of introduce some noise here, some brick action. Okay, obviously we've got our perspective like acting like it's completely reversed, which is stupid. So I'm going to actually get rid of those two lines and say, boom. That's better. Like that. Okay, so now let's take black, turn the opacity way down, turn this back to raw mode, and now, ooh, too dark. Turn the opacity even way down. Not way down, way, way down. Way, 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 way down. So this doesn't have to be super, like, strictly picky awesome. It just needs to be kind of, alright, kind of sort of suggestive of some noise. And what I'm going to do is, actually, let's switch brushes and add a little bit of, whoops, sorry about that. We probably want to do brush, not. Okay, I'm going to make those a little bit bigger. Okay, don't like that. It's a little too much. Just trying to bake a little bit of something that could maybe pass as rock texture in the background. The reason I'm not being super picky about it is I'm planning to actually defocus it here in half a second. So, and again, just kind of, whoa, dude, really? So this might look really strange what I'm doing, and it is, sort of. I'm just actually trying to just feel what kind of seems like it'll work. And I really want to bring in some shade here on the bottom. Yeah, that's probably not too bad. All right, so let's go Control M and just play with this a bit. Get a little bit more highlight, a little bit more shadow. And we'll do this as a filter mask. Boom. And then, what the heck? Let's add another, let's add a Gaussian blur. Style it in. Yeah, probably about there. Something like that. And we'll do that as a filter mask too. Okay, and now if you're really worried about the performance penalty, then dupe and group, meaning take the group and bake this one down. Control E. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. What I just did was not what I intended to do. But you know what? I like the way it looks, so I'm just going to bake it down anyway. And I'm thinking we might want to save our work. Save early, save often. Okay, and let's flatten the layer. Okay, that's probably all right. I think that's okay. So now I'm going to check my messages. I lost maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes? It might have thanks for weighing in on the software, Darren. Yeah, I mean, OBS blanks out every once in a while. It's a sucky thing, but yeah, Amar, yes, Krita has autosave. Actually, I think autosave is on, and it is actually saving in the background every once in a while. I tried Krita and Pencil 2D again on Saturday. Pencil 2D, yeah. Well, I got involved with the development of Pencil 2D for a while, actually. Found out it was surprisingly easy to animate it. Krita Pencil 2D has an easier UI for beginners with a camera feature as well. Yeah, I mean, we'll leave it at that. We'll take you at your opinion on Pencil 2D. I have probably overall slightly more jaundiced opinion of Pencil 2D. Okay, I'm going to actually do this. Whoops. I'm going to do this again. Create the layer, but let's have the opacity at 100%. So did that work? Yeah. Okay, so I don't want the speckles. So let's go ahead and turn that off. Make sure I still have the correct brush. Sorry. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is what I'm doing is, because they're kind of underneath an awning type situation. That would not make sense though. Here's what actually would make sense, come to think of it. What would make sense is locking the alpha. Put these guys in a group and lock the alpha. And then turn that down. Okay, sorry. I turned down the wrong layer. Okay, so we get a little bit of a sense of that overhang on the building, and then we'll go ahead and put the, maybe just strengthen that a little bit. So let's put that down above the background. Just kind of dial that in. Yeah, that looks pretty good actually. I think that's what I was shooting for. Okay, so that's not a bad looking shot. Oh, flip it. Gee, Dave. Should have done that earlier. Okay. A. Liquefy. Actually, it's not going to do me any good to liquefy it because it's animated. So if you want to make a correction. So this is actually an interesting Krita question. Okay, what if you're stuck in Krita and you have to make a correction, but you've got an animated layer. So right now the mouth, obviously we could go back to the original group, but I don't want to do that. I want to find another solution. Okay. How do you fix something when it's animated? Which means that if I were to fix something in this drawing here, it would be broken again on the next drawing because the entire drawing is broken in, or is baked into every single keyframe, right? So, well, there is a way. The way you do it is you add a layer. First of all, you can add a layer in erase mode, which means that if I hit the G key and were, for example, to make a little modification like this, it's gonna go ahead and overlay that change over the whole shot. And I actually like that change. So now, unfortunately, I need to add a new paint layer, and we're going to wind up baking this baby down again, but you know, I don't care. It's all good. It's all good, folks. So I'm just going to go ahead and, whoops, that's not good. So I'm just going to lay that in there. Boom, boom. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to hit Control E and merge the group. And I think we're done with this shot. So this is 289-E. So let's render this baby. File, save. File, render. Whoa, 100 frames? I don't think so. I would say 48. 48 frames. File. Save. Always save, save, save. Render. What did I say? 289-E. And this is preset for -F. Mustn't have that. So anyway, I hope this all this deep stuff has been entirely enriching for y'all. And now we're going to kind of stay refocused on animation. Okay, 289-E. There it is. There it is. Grab it. Open the sequence. The sequence is going to be the usual 8 frames per second. Boom. We'll bring Golek in, disable resampling, and then we can delete the storyboard out of the timeline, marry those guys together, save our work. Actually, let's clean the project media pool. And so she looks back, sees something going on. We'll get one line for Carlina. Golek says his line. Boom. And she's like, oh, wonderful. You'll have to tell me all about it. Okie dokie. Any complaints? Anybody want to complain? Okay. So I think I am going to steal this background. So let's file. Oh, let's do this. Let's go up here. Let's grab the storyboard and drag it into Krita in a new document. All right. Then let's I would say, since we saved this, let's go ahead and bake this down. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's just the background, right? Yeah. Let's copy that layer and let's paste that layer. Let's hit the A key and mirror that horizontally. Actually, that's not going to work. We can't mirror it horizontally. So we'll leave it at that. But let me just check something here. Let's not solo the layer. Hello? Okay. What I want to do, oops. I want to shift that a bit, expand it a bit. Oh boy. Okay, let's see here. Why is this layer? I'm going to flatten this layer and see what happens. It seems like Krita's really having to think way more than it should have to. Now that I don't need to resave. So let's save this, and of course it will immediately get saved as a Krita file, and liquefy. So this is a great example where my 12 core machine is acting like a dog. It's kind of uncool. But I'm just going to basically squish these around because I've got to put the door in there anyway. Okay. Let's take this layer and let's trim it to the image size. File, save. Okay. Now, I must think. B key. Let's put it on another layer. Let's see how that works. This might not work, but I'm going to try it. Just kind of seeing how the okay, I want to actually redo that, but with less opacity. Seeing how the freehand path tool behaves when you just get scribbly. It's basically kind of a useful mishmash of colors and textures, which kind of works in this case. Okay, let's turn the opacity. Just got a little bit of a lip there. It's probably even a little too opaque, actually. Over here, we need to have the okay. Now I'll make it really big, and now it boom casts a shadow on the door. See, it's starting to come to life here, folks. Starting to happen a bit. Okay. Now, the texture on the door, this is a little questionable if you really wanted to get picky about it, because yes, Jim. Okay, let me go through here a little bit. Are you live? Hit yes if reply. I apologize for missing your question. Darren answered it. Pre-recorded, live now, ask a question. Okay, so can liquefy move more than one layer at a time? The answer is yes. Anything you can do with the transform tool, you can do with the liquefy tool. So if we put her and we group them, we have a group, and now I can hit the A key, there's the transform tool, so I can take multiple layers and move them around. Similarly, I can grab liquefy, and it's affecting everything. Okay, so there you go. That answers your question. I believe, quite sufficiently. All right, back to the B key. And I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised at how well this stupid door is turning out. It's actually coming out quite nice. I'm allowing myself right now to sort of feed a little bit of this brown color, which is obviously trending towards reds, into the bricks as well, just not for any particular reason other than maybe it'll look okay. Okay, but the thing I wanted to do here is I did want to introduce a little bit of wood grain kind of thing. The reason I said this is maybe a little risky is ostensibly Carliana, or Carlina, depending on what name you think should be her name, because I'm not completely firm on what her actual name is pretty wealthy. Okay, so would she have a door that's got maybe some what appear to be maybe flaws in the wood? And the answer is it depends. For some people, having a real rough looking wood in their door or their floor or whatever is rustic, and it's actually a sign of wealth. But I don't think, frankly, that she would have an actual hole in the door, right? So I'm going to say we're going to go for rustic and try not to get too carried away with the grain. Okay. I guess that's that. And let me turn this back on. Okay. I'm going to do one more change here, actually. Let's try that. I cannot say I like that. I cannot say I like that. Okay. So up here, yeah, that seems like that was saved quite a while ago. So I am going to save my work. Just going to bounce between these two. Yeah, this is actually, this is kind of, this is interesting. And none of you guys would understand why I think it's interesting. So I'll try to explain this. Earlier, I had noticed that Krita seemed to be struggling performance-wise on this particular shot way more than usual, and it had something to do with the background. And I was a little confused about what was going on, and I still am not sure. But it was interesting that when I jumped up here to the storyboard, the background also looked out of whack. So I don't know. Maybe it's all in my imagination. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to do some hand painting on the bricks. Let's take her out and let's just kind of I'm not happy with the way those look. So no big deal. We'll just go in and do a little hand painting. Little too bold on your color there, Jack. I guess I've been having slightly better luck with these backgrounds by allowing some transparency in my brush. there's definitely more than one way to do it. So one thing that is suggested here is, let's turn the opacity way down. What you would get is you would get a shadow under here, and then it would also cast a shadow onto the one below, like so. So I think that actually helps. Whoops, that was a little rough at the start. Yeah, not too shabby, not too shabby. Let's deal with the mother. Okay, I'm going to actually jump her up out of the group and merge the group because there's really no reason for there to even be a group at this point. Okay, let's turn this off. I'm going to look at my script and look at Carliana's. So the whole Carliana thing, what the bottom line is, this is Tianara's mother, and her name is supposed to be Carliana, and in the script, everywhere in the script, it's spelled Carlina, not Carliana. So I've just kind of decided I'll defer on making that decision, but I definitely like having the extra A in there, and it also sounds more similar to Tianara's name, so I think it makes more sense as a name. So she says, "It's good to see you again, cousin. You bring good news?" Golik says, "Perhaps, cousin. Our moment may finally be at hand." Carliana says, "Excellent. Tell me all about it." Okay. So, under other circumstances, I might choose not to try to take this drawing and turn it into the character. In this case, I am, just for the pure interesting challenge of doing so. So I want to block this stuff in. And let's go back to my pencil and think about how we'd want to do this. So I'm actually going to go like this. I'm actually kind of being careful not to lift my pencil because I'm kind of liking that slight ghosting of the other color in there. Okay, take the G key. We do not want curve interpolation. So, flipping the canvas. Nope, no new messages or questions. So, cool beans. G key, let's grab this. Obviously this is way out of whack in terms of the size of it. So this is a strange situation actually. I don't normally I would sort of sketch this in, I think, you know, sort of like the pencil test idea. But in this case, And also, her characterization's pretty questionable. So maybe I should. The whole thing about her is that she has this Kevin Bacon style turned up nose. That's really kind of a key characteristic. Okay, not horrible, obviously not very feminine. And down here, let's just kind of maybe make this a little less extreme. Now we're starting to get into the zone. So yeah, I'm treating this more like a painting, actually. Focusing on, you know, sort of blocks of color. For no reason other than I'm just kind of enjoying doing it this way at the moment. So, you know, whatever. Little darker. What time is it? Pushing 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'll just kind of build this up like so. I do believe that she has green eyes similar to her daughter. Mm-hmm. G key. Okay, we'll be doing shadows the normal cartoon way, so. But yeah, she's definitely got that turned up nose. Okay, so these are a little harsh, as is that one, but I'm not going to deal with that one yet. So the other characteristic she has that I would say is also a bit of a Kevin Bacon thing is the high cheekbones. These were all just sort of pretty stilted ways to make her look evil, I guess. I don't know if it's really evil looking, but and obviously we're going to have to, the mouth is going to have to be reconfigured to be able to be speaking. So that's actually not too far off the track. Let's just go ahead and get some of this in here. And looks like no real comments or questions going on, so things are quietish in animation land. Quiet-ish. Keep this as reasonably simple as possible, because it is, after all, not a painting. So, but because I used the storyboard image, I'm going to turn on the stabilizer, by the way. I have to kind of go in and redraw the outlines. Boom, boom. And this would actually kind of go like that, so there's going to be a fairly dark shadow area inside of there. Here too, having a dull afternoon, you know, back up your computer, man. That's important. That is important. G key. E, and boom. And I'm going to go ahead and rip that right out of there. What do I want for lunch today? You know what? I might buy some pad thai. We have a bunch of Asian stores and restaurants right near us, and there's one that does really good pad thai that we like to take out from. So basically, two of us can get pretty much, I would say, 2 or 3 meals, you know, of pad thai, because we usually make some extra veggies and rice and add to it. So we usually get 2 meals for 2 of us for $20. It's pretty good. I love a good pad thai. All right, hitting the 5 key to flip this over. And she tends to have, I'm going to go ahead and draw this line on her chin because Carliana tends to wear, I don't want to say turtlenecks, but she tends to wear fairly neck heavy. Yeah, I mean, I have to say her characterization here is looking pretty good. So this is what I was trying to say just a moment ago. She tends to wear stuff like this. And then what you get is, it's a strange mix for her, actually. She's an interesting character to me from the standpoint that she is a wealthy, landowner in a culture where women don't tend to be the ones that own the land and call the shots. And so for me, that makes her character interesting. And I'm thinking that later on, I think there should probably be an episode at some point that sort of does something with that particular aspect of her character. Okay, so then let's just think about this for a moment. I'm going to put in, because I know this is going to have to be doubly shadowed. I'm going to put that in there. Okay. So now let's look at the obvious places where you're going to get a little bit of shadowing going on. Like so. And also pretty much down here. Okay, step 1. Step 2 would be the broader shadowed areas. Whoops, that did not work. It's kind of crazy how you can really tell when something's not working, usually pretty immediately and viscerally. It's usually pretty obvious. That's just a distraction. I don't think that's necessary. Okay, so I'm feeling like I want to get a little bit more here going on, maybe? And then let's unsolo the layer. See, look at that. Look at how long it's... Okay, maybe it's because I pressed that, so that strike what I was about to say. That didn't make sense. Sorry. Okay, so now... Oops. Wrong layer, goofball. So, oh, come on, Krita, really? Jeez, I hate that. You want to talk about something that actually makes me really, really pissed? This is it. This, it's just so dumb. You used to be able to lock the dockers, and you can't anymore. It just seems mindless to me. Okay, I am going to put her in a group so that I can actually put that, put this extra shadow. Sorry, we don't want to be alpha locked like that. Let's alpha lock it, and then what I want to do is I want to blur it a little bit. So let's do a Gaussian blur. Like so, and then let's just turn it way down and then dial it in. Okay, not too bad, other than the fact that, okay, let me let me reverse course here just a little bit. That shadow should be coming from the overhang, and so instead of doing the Gaussian blur, I'll just use my brush. But so I just want a little bit of extra shadow like that. Okay. Not too shabby, folks. I'm actually feeling like she's looking pretty gorgeous. You know, using the term gorgeous loosely in this particular case. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually solve this little problem that we obviously have by again hitting the G key. But what I'm going to do is turn the opacity way, way, way down so that I can actually, okay, I want that brush. Okay, opacity way down so that it just starts easing it out like there. Okay, so I'm going to actually grab this color, crank this back up, and I'm thinking I'm going to just, yeah, I want to be a little more aggressive with it, actually. She's not exactly what you call old, but she's no spring chicken either. So in her day, believe it or not, she was, you know, quite the looker, I think would be sort of the concept here. But her better days are probably behind her. Okay, so now what I got a little tweak here. And now what I need to do is go just a little bit darker on this shadow. Let's see. Oh, that didn't work at all. That didn't work at all. So let me... I'm going to bake it, man. I'm baking it, baby. Okay, so now there's one thing missing on her. And since I'm getting into shorter and shorter names, I'm going to just call this K for Carliana, and this is going to be B for background. All right. So now what I got to do is I'm going to show you a trick. And my trick is I'm going to grab this color, but then I'm going to rotate around to this color because I want her to have a bit of a gold necklace thing going on. So the idea is that by using the same tonal value, the same value as this color, that's going to cause me to naturally have the coinage. Okay, really? Stop everything. Okay, I've inadvertently done the quintessential mistake that I've done 10 trillion times, which is I was in the background. I was drawing onto the wrong layer. Okay, so there's, and I'm going to put this one slightly darker. Again, rotate the color around. And now I'm going to go one notch lighter, like so. And skosh of shadow on the chin line, which of course means I need to fix up my outlines a bit. So there she is. Isn't she lovely? She's lovely. Tahoma crashed again. Well, just great. Oh, that's just great. No, that's not fun. It is not fun when your software is smashing and crashing and stuff. It is not fun. And you do need to save early, and you need to save frequently. Save early, save often, I like to say. And if you don't, you will regret it. And sooner or later, you'll learn. Sooner or later, you will learn. And you will find yourself saving. I at this point, pretty much am hitting Control-Save, Control-S like all the time without even thinking about it. Now, one thing I don't like here is I want to add some variety to this little bauble situation. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab some different color, turn it quite transparent, and just kind of add some other stuff of different colors to her little decorative wingdinger, just for no apparent reason other than it's just fun to add a splash of color, and maybe it sort of suggests that she's doing okay in life. I don't know, but we'll go with that. And now what I'm going to do is grab my brush, turn my stupid stabilizer back off, and I'm going to go in and actually reinforce these lines. So I'm doing probably a bit of extra work here that's not strictly necessary for this particular pose slash shot, but what the heck. Okay, so now what we're going to do is hit the S key, grab her mouth, and go XV. So we've just smacked her mouth, excuse me, onto another layer. And now let's turn it off so that we can hit the G key, sample the flesh tone, go like, okay, what are the odds? Undo. Got to have your opacity cranked up there when you go to, frankly, to some degree, one would maybe think that that's an appropriate mouth shape for her. Okay, now, this is going to definitely be interesting. I better save my work. Because if I want to have a little more fun than usual with her mouth, then I'm going to have to do it this way. First step would be, okay, so I'm really going out on a limb here. What I'm doing right now is extremely unusual. Lower lip. Upper lip. Okay. Boom. So we'll put the upper on top just because it kind of sort of makes more sense. Typically, hitting the G key, and is it in curve mode? No. Okay, we've got the wrong brush by far. I'm just toggling between a couple brushes so I can just make sure that I'm adjusting it correctly. Okay, now let's grab the lower lip. You still have a bit of a problem, but we can hit the G key, put it in erase mode, draw a lasso around all this stuff, all this noisy, icky stuff, and now we're back in business, and obviously her lower lip is like ridiculous. So G key, let's go ahead and give the lower lip a bit of a little bit of a fix. So yeah, like I said, I'm actually taking a little more time than usual on this mouth stuff and on this character, just because I'm not totally. There was some stuff in the storyboard in the show earlier with her in it that I wasn't convinced that the choices I had made about her characterization were really that I was happy with. So I was kind of looking at this scene as an opportunity to make some adjustments to her, and I am doing just that. Okay, so I'm going to look at the comments. Tahoma crashed again. Have you set up Tahoma in your graphics card settings? Yeah, that's a great point that you're getting there just great from Darren T, because he understands setting up the graphics card in Tahoma, and I don't. I've never even bothered with it, and apparently it results in some stability and or performance advantages if you set things up correctly. So it can help with how smoothly it works. Control S for life, man. Yeah, isn't that the truth, Walter? Absolutely. Muscle memory. Yeah, that's what I'm doing, man. I'm always hitting Control S. Every time you see that pop up, that's what's going on. Okay, see if this helps. Yeah, of course you can share links, Darren. Jeez, oh Pete. Okay. So now one thing we're going to want to do here is Control Insert and Control Insert. These layers need to have keyframes. And what she says is she says it's good to see you again, but she's going to say that in the wide shot. So here she should say, you bring good news. All right, so let's just give this a crack. I'm going to go to frame. Okay, this needs to be frame on 4 frames a second, or 8 frames a second, but I'm going to frame 4. All right, and we're just going to kind of play with this and see how it goes. You ring good nope, a little too much there. So I don't know if I've ever done this before, but I'm using the liquify tool for lip sync. And let's go ahead and just make tiny adjustments on the top. Whoops. Got to be in the right layer there, dude. If you're not in the right layer, it won't work. And then obviously it probably goes without saying that I'm going to put a dark dark layer behind these. And I'm actually going to go here and make a slight adjustment here, and then we'll grab these two and boom. So what did she say? She says, you. Okay, that's my stupid. I changed that to 4 because I wasn't thinking. Let's make this 24 and let's save our work. Okay. Okay, so I would say this. She is not a slow talker, so I don't really like. Normally I would give 2 at 8 frames a second. For lip sync I usually give 2 frames. But for her, you bring good news. You bring. Okay, let's take this. We'll give her 1 extra frame here. You bring good news. You bring good news. Okay. So now in this group, I'm going to add a layer. And this is going to be kind of tricky. So I'm not going to give it any keyframes. That way I can jump around. And, whoops. We can jump around. And make it fit. Okay, so obviously we're going to have to, we're going to have to actually stop, Z. Okay, why did that? Yeah, okay, stop everything. Everybody stop. Yeah, I know. I'm the only one who needs to stop. But you'll notice what just happened. I don't know. I would have to look down here at the timeline to see. But what you can see right now is that the cell of upper lip is selected. But the layer of paint layer 2, which is our background, is selected. Up here, it's paint layer 2. But yet, a moment ago, when I hit insert, what did you see happen? You saw the upper lip disappear, as if what had happened was that I had inserted a keyframe right there. Okay? When I refer to spaghetti code and am critical of developers, this is the type of issue I'm referring to. This is a really actually a crazily big deal. Because what you have is you've got data in two different places. You've got a list up here and you have a list down here. And these two are not exactly talking together accurately. The truth of the matter is that the underlying data should only exist in one place. The data's over here in memory, and all these are doing is taking input and writing it to the data, and taking output, which would be a callback function, which causes the user interface to update, and then that would result in you see the interface update. I don't know if it's a Krita issue or if it's a Qt issue because of the way Qt uses what's called signals and slots to handle the message loop that all programs have when you're dealing with a graphical user interface. But there is definitely, and has always been, some real disconnection in certain places in Krita between what's going on in terms of your interaction with the program and the data. Well, what you're doing, what the interface shows you, and what the underlying data is actually keeping track of. Those three things can get out of sync sometimes. And it's not the worst thing possible ever, you know? I mean, it's not the worst thing that can ever happen. But it can certainly be a pretty big annoyance. And I only rant about it because as a software developer, it's utterly unacceptable. You know, it's completely unacceptable. You know, if I was creating software for a client, which I have done, fairly significant software that has had to run flawlessly and bug-free for years, you can't have those kind of mistakes. You know, you simply cannot have those kind of mistakes. If you had the kind of errors you see in software with data management that I'm referring to here, if you had that in the software that runs an automobile, you'd have people, you know, like, it'd be like you go to turn the key on your car and it's like, yeah, it'll start unless it doesn't. And if it doesn't, maybe if you bang on the dash, then it will start. You know, it's just like the standards are so astonishingly low. It's just crazy. Just crazy. But that's the world of software, such as it is today. So let's go to the lower lip here. I'm going to actually flip this over and see if I can maybe make this. Actually, let's steal the upper lip color. Okay, and now down here, what would actually be the best thing in Krita would be if I click anywhere in the timeline, such as here, by virtue of the fact that I selected that cell, would mean that that layer gets selected, and it would also obviously be selected up here as well. That's what really should happen in Krita, and it doesn't. You don't actually change the active layer by clicking in a cell, and that's this very specific reason why I often find myself drawing in the wrong layer. It's because of that very thing. Because I'll click in the cell and I'll forget that it's not enough to click in the cell. You have to actually select the layer explicitly, or it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I find it a bit silly, to put it generously. Generously. Now Darren's going to say, well, Dave, have you mentioned this to the developers so that they can address this issue? And I will have to say, as I have said before, no, I actually haven't. I just rant about it every once in a while and continue to live with it. Okay, so the layer not being selected when clicking in a cell seems wrong. Well, exactly, that's all I'm saying, and it would be a simple fix. It may take less time to figure out how to program machine learning than to animate all my Ds faster than I can. Well, if you're going to learn software development at this time in history, Amar, you are correct. The very thing you should be learning is machine learning, because it is the future. Okay, I'm gonna say I think that this is required. I'm going to go G key, and let's just see how this goes. Yep, That's what we need. That's what's been missing. Wow, that's going to help a ton. Well, I've just, you know, I'm kind of in Johnny Quest territory here. It's stylistically, this reminds me of Johnny Quest. I'm really doing a little more work than normal on this, as far as the lip sync goes. But it looks good. Looks cool, right? Anyone want to disagree? Okay, so I'm going to say this is 289D. I'm going to check my storyboard. Yeah, it's 289D. Okay. So let's go up. Well, let's render first. So 289D. Need to make sure this is D and not an E. Boom. Let's render her out. Let's jump back up to here. Here's 289D. Obviously, we've got it in the storyboard in two places, and that's wrong. But I'm going to take just this one out, and we're going to go to 289D. Render. There it is. Just waiting eagerly for us to open it up and smack it into our show. Here we go, into the show with you. And that feels pretty good. He looks really, really, really orange. You know, I actually wondered about that when I'm going to have to go in and desaturate him. Now, I could maybe fix it this way. Let's just do a color correction. As long as we're here, it's just one shot. We might as well just do a color corrector and see, because I kind of felt like his clothes were a little oversaturated too. So let's just go with that. Always turn it off and on to see. But that is feeling pretty good there, folks. I would say that is definitely working pretty well. Okay, so I'm just glancing at the chatter. I'm actually really kind of excited about something, which is this is the first time today, literally, where my average number of viewers during a live stream is up around 10, okay? Right now it's 9, and this is the first time that I've seen any amount of chatter that actually is going on between the viewers as opposed to people addressing questions to me and stuff, and I think that's pretty cool. All right, so the layer not being selected, okay, blah, 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 blah. I can see why you might not want it to do that. It'd be handy to click anywhere in the frame just to select the frame, but continue to draw it in the same layer. Okay, so an interesting thing about what the point Darren made is, here's what I wouldn't want. Okay, I would not want the developers of Krita to add a star-spangled new feature that makes it so that when I click somewhere here in the area, that it makes a contextual decision about what layer I want to be activating. Okay? Now, you may not have been referring to that. That might not have been what you meant. But I will tell you this. There is no scenario. And by the way, I'm jumping back here. So the idea is I would not want to have the software be sufficiently smart that if I click here, it knows that I want to do some operation on her. Okay? I'm much happier with the idea that I have to select a layer. I'm just saying down here, selecting a cell should select the layer. That's all I'm saying. If they tried to make it so that selecting anywhere in the 2D drawing space, it's going to intelligently decide what I intended, I guarantee the software will get it wrong 9 times out of 10. Guaranteed. 9 times out of 10. And what will happen is you go to click somewhere and just work, and all of a sudden it'll switch contexts on you, and you won't realize that it did, and it would be a real mess. So I don't know if that's what you meant, but there is software that's kind of that way. Obviously in Blender, it sort of has to decide intelligently in the 3D view what you're grabbing. But as Blender has been expanding, it's become more and more difficult for them to manage that. Hence, the outliner has become something you really want to have access to all the time, which the analogous thing to that in Krita would be obviously the stack of layers. So anyway, why do you think it's important to know about earlier Disney documentation for beginner animation? Why, or do you think it's important to know about earlier Disney documentation for beginner animators? Walter, I'm going to come back to that question in just a second. I'm going to zip through. I've seen some 3D animation done within a short time. Oh, with AI. Yeah, for sure. Knowing the history is important is helpful. Star Spangled. I know, it's just being snarky. Is that so is that a very America update? If you've got 20 layers, I can imagine it's handy not to have. Okay, so this speaks to, it does speak to your workflow, because I'm a guy who's constantly baking it down and trying to relegate it to a relatively small number of layers. If you look at what Ed today is doing, typically he's got lots of layers going on. It's just a choice. It's just a choice. In my opinion, once you get beyond, I don't know, it's kind of like what you can keep in your head. They say you can keep 7 things in your head, and once you get to 8, you can't remember them all anymore. I think it's like that. Once you get past about a half dozen layers, you begin to find yourself spending more time navigating the layers than just doing the art or the animation. Is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Amar. You can do a search, but now you're going to the search box and you're typing something in, and it becomes a bit of a chore. So then the question becomes, what's the trade-off? In this case, we see that the character is essentially flat. Other than her mouth, that's it. I have flattened her, flattened her, flattened her. And the reality is now I'm going to be able to go to another shot later and literally drag and drop, you know, metaphorically speaking, this layer already colored, already painted. I could add a little color correction, but I could drag this into another shot anytime I want and reuse it. Not that I necessarily will, but I probably will. And I'm certainly going to be reusing it for more lip sync, because this same pose, you can see the shot that I'm working with right now, it cuts back to her. So this is the storyboard image, and this is the animation I just did. Okay, so now I want to get back to Walter's question. Hi, Kyle's dad. So dropping deer. Who are you, if you don't mind me asking? I appreciate that you identified me accurately as Kyle's dad, because, well, I am Kyle's dad. But I am curious who the heck you are. So let me know. Okay, so let me answer Walter's question. Walter's basically saying this: is it important to bone up on traditional, especially early era Disney animation in order to do animation? My answer to that would be no. Okay, I'll just say flat out. Yeah, identify yourself. Identify yourself. I would say no, and the reason I say no is because if I was going to rename my channel, okay, because it's been BlendedPlanet since way before I was doing animation stuff, and obviously that's my website where my films are. It's sort of the home of my filmmaking operation, is BlendedPlanet Incorporated. So if I was going to rename my channel, I would rename it The Pragmatic Animator. And I say pragmatic because when you go past the artistry, let's say, of learning how to do animation, and you get into the practicalities of what you actually have to do for this shot or this show, you're getting into a whole different set of priorities. My focus is on pragmatism, because I'm not just doing a toy animation that's 7 seconds long, you know, partly because it's cool and partly to see if the software can do it and all that sort of thing. This is a 48-minute long show that, by the way, to do it in the time frame that I'm doing it is supposed to be impossible. Okay, so pragmatism becomes very, very important. So people ask me why I use Krita, because pragmatically speaking, it actually turns out to be faster most of the time, and being able to just skip along and do what I've got in my head is the most important thing. Okay, so this is not Disney animation. Some of the character designs are somewhat informed by Disney tradition. Some of the character designs, but not that much. So this show is kind of a hybrid between Avatar: The Last Airbender, I would say, and Del Toro Quest, because Del Toro Quest, most of the animation in can't talk. Most of the animation in Del Toro Quest, other than the CGI, is at 8 frames a second. So these are economic choices. You're making economic choices, and for me, as somebody doing animation and or live streaming about it, my emphasis is on the pragmatic business of getting the job done, whatever that takes. And a great deal of what makes traditional Disney animation what it is gets completely thrown out the window. There's actually almost nothing about this shot that is reflective of traditional Disney animation. Number one, it's a static drawing. The only thing that's animated is the mouth. This is very much an economical Saturday morning cartoon / anime approach to animation, and that is an economical and practical choice that I've made. It's not the right choice, it's just a choice. And if you go to AMB Animation, you know, he's doing a great job of teaching people about traditional Disney style animation, and it's a beautiful thing. But the thing is, remember, Walter, for the most part, it does not exist anymore. When you actually see 12 or 24 frame per animation on shows, like on the Disney Channel or PBS Kids or whatever it is, Nickelodeon, you're actually usually seeing a fairly high level of rigged animation. What I would say to make this into a rigged animation, what you would do is you would cut out her head. You basically probably have you probably have 4 or 5 pieces. You'd have the head covering, the underlying body, the eyes, and the mouth. You'd split them into different pieces, and then you would rig it up maybe with bones or whatever, which you can do in OpenToonz, you can do it in Blender. And the whole mentality behind it, the whole reason to do it that way, is so that you can do higher frame rate animation efficiently and reuse your assets. So this whole idea of 24 frame, so you have 24 frame per second animation. What you don't have is 24 frames per second hand-drawn animation where all 24 frames per second are a separate drawing. It basically doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so now, Amar, you're pretty opinionated, so you may want to weigh in on this. When I first learned about animation, it's helpful to know. Okay, so yeah, if you want to talk about whether it's helpful to understand the principles, yeah, it's helpful. But the truth is, I make a bold statement here, is that for the most part, there's a video on YouTube that's got a lot of views called the 12 Principles of Animation, and that video does a pretty good job of recapping what the lessons that the 12 old men of Disney taught and passed on to people like us in Disney Animation, The Illusion of Life, the book. I own that book. I bought it when I was in high school, so I've had it for years. I also have Richard Williams' book, The Animator's Survival Kit. Those are the 2 best books. I use frame by frame all the time with 24 minutes. Okay, and so to Just Great, yeah, anime, definitely. Anime is the home of traditional frame-by-frame animation. It's just that most of it is done at 8 frames a second, sometimes 6, sometimes 12, mostly 8, I think it's safe to say. So, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and get this last shot done, and I'm not going to do the wide shot today. So, I think it's really good to learn, but it doesn't actually help that much in getting a real job done, in my experience so far. There are definitely aspects to it that have proven to be, you know, good principles. So I won't belabor the issue. Anime also has a lot of static images, or just camera moves over static images. Well, exactly. You know, it's like a walk cycle. This is a great example. Would be a walk cycle. The question to ask yourself is, why would I learn to do a walk cycle? Richard Williams' book spends half the book teaching you about walk cycles. And what you're going to learn from doing walk cycles in the way that it applies to everything else in animation is very valuable. The question is, in the real world, what do we actually do? In the real world, a walk cycle, frankly, is taking a static image like this, wiggling it up and down, and then animating the background behind her. That's what you see in anime all the time. Why? Because it's way faster and way cheaper to do. And I think the significant point about that is that from a storytelling standpoint, it still works really, really well. And it turns out that the traditional walk cycle is not, in my opinion, actually that useful that much of the time. It's useful from the standpoint of your knowledge, but it's not useful from the standpoint of visual storytelling. When I go back and look at Disney's Robin Hood or the Aristocats, I see a lot of things that I think are very, very, very bad that actually harm the visual storytelling because they were so addicted to a certain way of doing animation. It wasn't their best period, in my opinion. Now, on the other hand, when I look at The Emperor's New Groove, which I hate as a story, the characters in the story I can't stand. But the character design and the quality of the animation is really good. So it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, in terms of, what's important. Emperor's New Groove, to me, is a really interesting study because I cannot stand the characters I think the story is lame. And it shows, if you find the documentary out there on it, you can see why it's such a weak movie because it went through so many changes and problems along the way to becoming a film. Excellent. Tell me all about it. Okay, so that's her line. Let's get back here and just get the job done here. Blah, 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 blah. I'm doing more talking than working. Okay, so the question becomes, again, let's be pragmatic. The key question right now is, can I just reuse this shot? Excellent. Excellent. Okay, what I can reuse is this. So I'm going to take this stuff, move this downstream, pull this back here, and go like this. Okay, so now this shot, I gotta check my show. This is gonna be, that's D, this is E, that's F. Oh boy. Okay, so unfortunately what I need to do, okay, I'm having to do something here that's a little unusual just because of my numbering scheme. What I'm gonna do here is I'm going to actually duplicate these frames down here after 24 because I ran it up to 24. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run up here and I'm going to actually make this a longer shot so that I can reuse the assets. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this to 24 and 48. So I'm going to make it so I have a different start point. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so now we need to make a few changes on her mouth, and this gets to Jim P. Animation's question from earlier. Can you use the liquefy tool on a group? Well, I'm about to do it right now. I'm going to hit the A key, and then I'm going to hit liquefy, okay? And the reason is I want to turn this into a smile. Here. Okay, excellent. Alright, so here, Krita's going to actually be a little bit stupid as far as seeing what I'm doing. But let's see how this works. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, this key didn't really quite work. And as you can see, I guess I'm going to have to do this one layer at a time because it's Krita, this gets back to what I was saying earlier about data management. Krita actually does a pretty awful job of managing its pixel data. Surprisingly bad considering, in other words, what I'm trying to say is the program should crash and smash a lot more than it does considering how obvious it is to a programmer how unstable the underlying data management is. Hang on one second. Just great, and I'll tell you. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So I don't want these keys. I want these to be taken out. and then I want to modify this one and just make sure it looks the way I want, because this is going to be my landing right here going forward in the shot. So, okay, I'm going to save this. I'm just saving the whole thing. Ultimately, I'm going to render out all 48 frames and then split it in two in the timeline. Okay, so he's saying, how are you doing that again? Okay, so I think Just Great is asking about the liquefy tool. So the liquefy tool in Krita is this. It's the transform tool. You click the transform tool, and then you can right mouse click in your space, and there's a bunch of sub options of the transform tool. If you go with a free transform, then that's just your regular, I guess you'd call it a cage that lets you just rotate or scale or move things. Okay, liquefaction with multiple layers would be, I've got multiple layers and they're in a group. So what I do is I hit the transform tool and go liquefy on the group. And then that causes animation keys to be... Okay, I'm reconnected. So the underlying data management is very sketchy. It's very buggy. It always has been. And so that technique of animating a group, especially with the liquefy tool, I don't recommend doing. It would be better to just deal with the layers one at a time if you want to actually be able to see what you're doing. When you try it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, Max, yes, the short answer is yes. Everywhere else in this show, that's what I've done. I've done simple, pretty much anime style lip syncing, not quite anime style, but very simple shapes. I just, for whatever reason, am going a little further with this character today. Just because. But you're right. You're completely right, Max. That's right. Open, half open, and closed. That's exactly right. You're not going to get any argument out of me. Usually that is what I do. I'm just kind of having a little fun with her today. Okay, so I would say here, I'm going to actually take the group and I'm going to animate using free transform tool. But you can see, you see how it just switched? It switched back to this, what you see on the first frame. So it's very problematic. Working with groups in general in Krita is a hit and miss proposition, and you will develop your own way of working because it is such a hit and miss proposition. So she says, excellent. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to duplicate this, tell let's use this one. And then we'll animate a couple others. Okay, so this one needs to be changed. Lower lip, this is where you're going to see that animating these guys individually makes more sense anyway. See, because I can just go into these individual layers. And she says, tell me all. Tell me. Okay, that I don't like at all. Let's grab the upper lip. Okay, now we'll go here, up, down. Yeah, I mean, Max is so right. I never do lip sync like this. Like never. This is just kind of a little bit of an indulgence today for fun. All up, B for about it. So let's grab this. And I want the biggest open mouth. I guess it'd be this one. About. Actually, I like this one better. And then I'm just going to have her do a little bit of a mouth close. And then go to her smile. And we'll see how it plays. Boom. Okay, so she should say, and by the way, this needs to be, let's go to 60. Okay, not too bad. Excellent. Tell me all about it. Okay, wrong, little problem here. Tell me all. Okay, so let's speed her up a little bit. I'm just going to kind of do this on hunches. Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Tell me all about it. Okay, that worked. I'm going to save my work. So this allows me to, I'm getting 2 shots out of 1 in this case is what I'm doing. Okay, learn the rules before you break the rules. Well, let me say this. Okay, I want to say this to Walter very specifically. And you're fine to follow A and B if you want to learn traditional Disney style animation. He's doing a pretty good job of teaching it. So, sure. What? No, no. Now that's not true. Okay, I mean he is a real animator, but I mean not a professional animator. He is not. To be very clear, his professional experience is in storyboarding. Okay, but I want to say this because I've mentioned on this channel before that he banned me from his channel because I came on one time and made a comment that was not favorable. I was just asking a question really about a flaw I saw in the animation he himself had done, and he very quickly banned me from the channel and kind of went on a rant. That's his prerogative to do so, and I don't really hold it against him. That's, you know, he's kind of a little bit of an edgy guy, but I mean, as far as the animation instruction and what he's doing, I think it's really pretty good, and so I don't want to criticize him in that respect. But what he's teaching is something that he's personally very passionate about, and I think it's great. Okay, but I think if you're going to go on YouTube and you're going to go out there and look far and wide for different input about this, you're going to get a lot of opinions that revolve around the software. And this is where AMB animation is exactly right. He makes the comment in his little promotional video that plays when you go to his channel, I think. He makes the point that this is not about the software. Okay? My recommendation is, if you're going to agonize, for example, should I be using OpenToonz? Should I be using Blender? Should I be using Krita? Should I be using Clip Studio Paint? At this point, having been doing this for quite a while, this is my advice. Pick one. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter a bit. Just pick one. Because ultimately, you will develop a workflow that adds efficiencies where necessary to the way of working that you enjoy. But this idea that there's a right answer or a right way to do it is silly, because the common thread between all of it is just being able to draw. And if you suck at drawing, that's okay. Paper and pencil's okay, but it's just real inefficient. It just is. There really is no... I mean, having software to use is really a wonderful thing that we have today. Okay? But you know, you can learn a lot with paper and pencil for sure. But again, my advice is just pick a tool and then focus on the thing that's common to all of them, which is timing and drawing. If you suck at drawing, then do whatever you need to do to get a, like here, think about it. This particular picture is a static drawing. So if you found a drawing online of some established character and you just cut and pasted it into your software, just so you could practice either maybe animating her by distorting her head, you know, moving her around or whatever, you're going to learn a ton very quickly by just doing it. You're going to learn more by just doing it, as long as you're thinking critically about what went wrong when things go wrong. You know, why does this not look right? What's the problem? You can screen grab, you know, a show or a movie, or obviously you can download a video and drag it into a program like Blender, and you can literally see exactly what choices they made in terms of their timing and how they animated it. So I encourage people to you know, use whatever tools are available to you to learn what you want to learn in your way. Again, there is no right answer. I don't believe at this point in time there's a right answer. I'm not really strongly even opinionated about the software. I'm just landed on Krita because in practice it just seems like that's how I seem to get the job done. But I use Tahoma, I use OpenToonz, I use Blender. I just use them when I need them. Okay, I like the way this looks, so I'm going to go ahead and render this out. So now it's 60 frames per second. I need to slap this up on the other screen. And this is D. Yep, that's the one. So I'm going to go ahead and render out all 60 frames. And then we're going to bring it into the editor. And then I think I'm probably going to wrap it up. The thing, if you don't know how to draw or animate and try to animate without understanding how to draw, anime is an abstraction of the traditional principles. Okay, slow down, Amar. With animation, do you start with the anime or the traditional principles? Same with animation. Do you start with anime or the traditional principles? The main difference between anime and everything else is that anime favors as much as possible using static imagery and animating in the most economical way possible. So what you will learn there is extremely valuable and probably more applicable to the real world marketplace than learning traditional Disney animation. Why do I say that? Because most of the stuff that's happening in the marketplace is more akin to the anime approach than to the traditional Disney approach, because the traditional Disney approach is too expensive. It just requires too many drawings. The most expensive thing we do is draw a picture. So if I can draw her head one time and get the shot done, I'm not going to draw her head 48 times. It's purely an economical choice, right? I hope that makes sense. I'm not saying it's the right choice. It's just my choice. Again, I'm the pragmatic animator. Okay, so now what I have to do is bring this back in. This is D. There it is. Now it's 60 frames long. Let me just get this in here. I'm spending way more time yakking than animating or editing or whatever, and I want to kind of get the job done that I'm trying to do so I can wrap it up, answer a couple questions, and take a break. Okay, so this has to be split here. This comes here. Then we're just basically using the second half of it here, like that. And when I get snarky here on YouTube, for example, it's usually because the truth of the matter is that very, very, very few people are doing what I am doing. Yes, thank you, Darren. Very, very, very few people are doing what I'm doing, which is a complete actual show. Something that can be sold in the marketplace and put out on all the platforms. And I fully expect that it will be, because I've already done it with movies. And the only advantage I have in that regard is that I do have the experience with film, so that I don't doubt that I can get my show to market. And I think that's a big barrier for a lot of young people, is they wonder if they essentially think of it as whether the world has given them permission to do the thing that they want to do. And what's so sad to me is they don't realize that the world has given them permission. There's never been a better time to create all sorts of media. And whatever it is that you want to do, you can do. You just do it. You don't need someone else to give you permission, and you don't necessarily need someone else to help you. Now, you may need someone else to help you. It depends. I'm going to move this down to the other screen so I can switch screens and follow along with my script. So I'm a little ahead of myself on this. Oh, yeah, okay. So she says, let's just look at this for a minute. So she looks back. There's a focus pull. There they are. We'll do that shot later. She says, let me go back a little bit. She says, it's good to see you again. Okay, she actually says that here. It's good to see you again. You bring good news? Golik says, perhaps, cousin, our moment may lie at hand. Disney animation is also just a distortion on reality. Paper and pencil, haha. Animation. So I'm back on now. I've done what I needed to do for now. I'm gonna leave the medium shot for later. I'm not gonna try to do that today. Certainly not in this session. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at the messages to just see if there's anything worth addressing here. If you don't know how to draw or animate and try to animate without understanding how to draw in 3D space, I think the simple fact of the matter is that you don't actually, I mean, Family Guy proves that you don't have to be great at drawing to do an animation that's entertaining and that people enjoy. That's a fact. You can have very simplistic, limited drawing, and it's truly about engaging the audience with the characters and the writing. So the writing matters, the character design matters, the voices matter, the music matters, everything matters. Animation is just one little piece of it. And the mistake that Disney made in the 60s in terms of the visual quality of what they're doing is it seems like the 9 old men and their proteges came to believe that motion and animation movement could somehow make up for poor storytelling and or poor writing. And so they had relatively weak writing that they were trying to compensate with visual motifs in which they were often repeating themselves. And it didn't work. It was one of their weak periods of their history. And frankly, that period of their history is mostly what you're seeing from AMB animation. So as far as the pure animation technique, it's really pretty good. It's not, some of it's a little weak, but basically it's way better than most people could do. Let's put it that way. So, you know, you have to respect that. So a ton of people think they can start learning to draw, but starting out in anime. I think you can. What animation software is that? Okay, so Darren answered that. Thank you. The Adult Swim and Cartoon Network use the limited anime. And, you know, look at South Park. You know, look at South Park. Made to look like cutout animation. It's not actually cutout animation, but it looks like cutout animation. And it works. It entertains people. To me, if it's entertaining, that's great. That's it. That's the only measure. I don't know of anyone that's doing what you're doing on YouTube. Well, I appreciate that, Darren, because neither do I. If I did, I would be following them. I would be paying attention. You know, maybe you or maybe Ed are going to sort of evolve to a point where you're actually working on a finished property, and it might be the Futurama thing. That's great. It's all good. If you're saying anime is a distortion on reality, I agree with you. I think the most important thing you can learn, though, from anime is the fact that a lot of the choices that are made come from an economic vantage point. The choices are not because this is the most aesthetically ideal or impressive thing you can do, but how can we cheaply do something that keeps the show moving forward and entertains the audience? And so you see all these you know, squiggly animation lines and all these things that look great. They look good, but they're really cheap and simple to do. All right, AMB is not doing what he's selling in his courses. I would say that that is true. He tends to favor his audience, which is understood. Well, they're paying his bills, man, and again, I respect that. From a business standpoint, I think he's doing a great job. I mean, I don't know how much money he's making, but I assume he's doing okay. Believe me, if I could do this full time, I would be doing the same thing you're doing. As soon as I get enough money saved up, I'll be heading that route. As soon as I can persuade Mrs. T to finance me not to be working, I'd be doing the same. Yeah, it's all good. Again, I am definitely going to take the position that I am the pragmatic animator, and the choices I'm going to make are basically driven by the pragmatism of the project at hand, whatever it requires. I think there are some ways that the Futurama thing is going to prove to be harder than what I'm doing here. Maybe quite a lot harder, but we'll see. We'll see. So, okay, guys, with that, I just saw Valerie walk by, so I'm going to go hang with her. I'm going to end my stream for now. I've gotten almost 30 seconds done today. I probably wasted an hour and a half talking, so it looks like I've probably put about 4 hours in, and I've gotten almost 30 seconds of show out of it. That's not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that, and I think I could do even better. So anyway, with that, I will say goodbye for now, and you guys are great. It's been a lot of fun, and of course, there will be more later.